The hall of the Galactic Council glowed like a living star, its ceiling layered with crystal light that shimmered across 1,000 alien faces. Every species gathered to witness the judgment of a single world, and in the center beneath that blinding light stood the delegation from Earth. 5 humans in dark uniforms who looked too small for the scale of the chamber yet carried a silence that unsettled everyone. The oldest among them, Ambassador Rain, kept his head high even as the verdict. Scroll floated above him, the words glowing red. Earth is to be exiled from the Union of Worlds. A ripple of noise moved through the crowd like wind through metal, the sound of triumph and fear mixed together. Alien leaders leaned toward each other whispering, "At last, the humans are gone," while others nodded solemnly as if this decision was mercy, not punishment. The High Chancellor of the Council raised one shimmering hand, her voice calm but cold. "The species known as humanity has shown aggression, independence, and emotional volatility incompatible with the peace of the galaxy. By unanimous vote of 93 member worlds, Earth is banished from all trade, territory, and right of representation." Her words echoed through the hall, translated into hundreds of languages at once, turning into a single collective sentence that felt like a hammer strike. Exile. The human delegation didn't move, they didn't shout or plead, they simply listened, and when the Chancellor finished, Rain pressed his palm to his chest and said quietly into the microphones, "You fear us because we remind you of yourselves." Gasps filled the chamber. Guards stepped forward, but he continued, voice steady. "You call us dangerous, unpredictable, emotional, but it was those same things that built your alliances, that ended your wars, that saved you from extinction when our fleets fought beside yours. Remember that before you erase us." The guards grabbed his arm, but he didn't resist. He only looked at the sea of alien eyes watching from their floating platforms. "Remember," he said once more, then turned and walked away. The council gates opened with a deep metallic groan, and as the humans left, the hall filled with the sound of applause. Mocking, relieved, triumphant, like a celebration at a funeral. Outside the council spire, the human shuttle waited under heavy escort, its silver hull scorched from the long flight through alien space, and when it lifted off, every camera drone followed, broadcasting the image across the galaxy. 5 humans fading into the blackness between stars, the last representatives of a world the galaxy had just erased. On distant worlds, the news spread fast. Taverns filled with laughter, markets with speculation. Traders whispering that the Terrans were finished, that without allies or resources they would collapse within a decade. Yet on Earth there was no panic. There were no protests, no cries for forgiveness. The planet's night side glowed softly from orbit, cities alive with quiet determination. In the old capital, lights burned in underground chambers where generals and scientists met in silence, the air heavy with dust and purpose. They had watched the broadcast, heard the Chancellor's words, seen the cheers. No one spoke for a long time until an older woman, Admiral Sato, finally said, "So they think they've buried us." Another voice answered from the dark, "Then let them forget the grave they dug." Above them, the satellites that once transmitted council signals began shutting down one by one, communication channels severed deliberately, as if Earth was closing its own eyes to the galaxy. The world that had once shared technology and medicine with hundreds of species became a ghost overnight. Ports locked, stations silenced, ships recalled. The last Terran freighters returned from trade routes carrying messages of farewell, sometimes bullets instead of payment. Humanity withdrew like a tide, slow, silent, certain. From the moons of Jupiter to the colonies on Mars, the same order was whispered through encrypted codes. Project Sanctuary commence. Factories that had been idle for decades roared back to life. Orbital yards lit up with new construction, and entire continents went dark under power redirection. To the outside galaxy it looked like collapse, but to those inside it was rebirth. The galaxy forgot Earth faster than anyone expected. A century passed like dust through starlight, new alliances rose, new wars burned and faded, and the name of humanity became something children learned only in cautionary tales, the violent species, the reckless ones, yet in the uncharted dark beyond map space faint signals still whispered in old Terran code, fragments of sound that no one could trace. Just static shaped like heartbeat, Pirates who ventured too far sometimes spoke of ghost stations where lights moved behind glass and human voices echoed in languages long dead. The council dismissed them as myths, but every few years something strange would happen. An old satellite returning from nowhere, a derelict ship suddenly repaired, a trade route cleared of raiders overnight. Unexplained, unseen, unclaimed, and still the galaxy laughed, believing humans had vanished forever. But on the far edge of the Orion Spur, in the shadow of a dim red star, the truth lived in silence, a planet called Sanctuary turning slowly in darkness, its surface carved with vast domes and buried cities where humanity had rebuilt itself in secret, generation after generation learning from the mistakes of their ancestors. Their technology faster, smaller, deadlier. Their ships built from alloys that could bend light itself, their fleets hidden in black docks carved into asteroids the council maps had marked as empty. And in the deepest chamber beneath the planet's crust, the old flag of Earth still hung, tattered but not forgotten, a symbol of everything they had lost and everything they would one day reclaim. The High Admiral of the Terran Dominion, descendant of the exiled fleet, stood before that flag and spoke to her officers. "They think silence broke us," she said softly. "But silence taught us how to listen." Her words were recorded, encrypted, sent through invisible channels across the hidden network that stretched from one forgotten world to another. On Mars, the terraforming domes now served as ship foundries. On Titan, they bred new engines that drank plasma instead of fuel. On old Earth itself, the skies stayed quiet, but beneath its oceans entire cities thrived. Powered by geothermal fire, generations of children grew up learning about the day of exile not as tragedy but as lesson. Never depend on those who fear you. Scientists studied alien biology to create cures faster than any council lab. Soldiers trained in gravity wells so deep that alien physiology would break. And all of them repeated the same oath whispered by their elders. "The stars cast us out, but we will return brighter than they can imagine." Outside that hidden network, the galaxy kept spinning blind. The council bloated with bureaucracy, proud of its peace, its fleets old, its worlds lazy. They had forgotten how to fear, forgotten that peace without challenge rots from the inside, while humanity hardened like tempered steel in the cold. Even among aliens who traded near the outer rims, rumors began spreading again. Merchants swore they had seen ships without drive signatures, black hulls that reflected no light, moving faster than sensors could track, Terran ghosts. They called them, half afraid, half fascinated. But the council refused to investigate, arrogance louder than curiosity, until one day a listening post on the edge of council space captured a faint message buried deep in background noise. A string of numbers, then a voice, calm, human, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "To those who remember our exile, your time of forgetting ends." Then silence. Technicians stared at the transmission in disbelief, and when they tried to trace its origin, every system in the post shut down at once as if something had looked back through the signal. By the time the council's security arrived, the entire station was dark, its data erased, and burned into the wall near the main console was a single phrase written by hand: "We remember," the same words once spoken by Ambassador Rain on the Day of Judgment. The discovery sent tremors through the political core. Yet still they denied, issuing a statement calling it a hoax, an imitation of human script. But deep down the oldest species felt something they hadn't felt in centuries: fear. And far away beyond their reach, the Terran Dominion listened to that fear ripple through their encrypted channels, the High Admiral watching holograms of council debates flickering on her desk. "They've noticed," said her aide, and she replied, "Good. Then the silence is over." Above Sanctuary, the first armada of black ships rose slowly. Through clouds, engines glowing with blue fire that left no heat, fleets spreading like shadows across the night, every hull engraved with a single symbol, the mark of the exiled Earth. And as they moved toward the stars, humanity's long quiet breath ended, replaced by a whisper that became a promise: the forgotten are returning. For months the Galactic Council tried to bury the strange transmission, calling it a glitch, a ghost frequency, a forgotten echo from some pirate band. But fear has its own gravity, and it began to pull the truth toward the surface. Deep space traders whispered about entire convoys that vanished near the dark zones. Sensor logs showed perfect silence followed by sudden blackouts. And when search teams arrived, there was nothing left except ships disassembled with surgical precision. Every bolt, every wire stacked in neat circles as if some invisible engineer had taken them apart just to prove it could be done. On the hull of the last freighter they found the same words etched by a plasma torch we remember. Those 2 words froze the council chambers the day they were read aloud. Diplomats stared at each other, voices trembling, old memories returning like ghosts from history lessons they thought they'd forgotten. A delegate from the Varine species said softly, "Only humans would write before they strike." But the Chancellor dismissed it. "Humans are extinct beyond the rim, this is imitation." Still, her tone carried less conviction than fear, and, as if the universe wanted to mock her certainty, that same week the beacon world of Thessa went dark. No distress call, no explosion, just darkness spreading across its surface like ink. When rescue drones arrived they found the population alive but unconscious, every system offline, every defense grid frozen, and carved into the city's central tower were coordinates, a trail leading to the forgotten edge of the Perseus Arm, Earth's last known colonies. The Council assembled a fleet of 100 ships to investigate, each captain boasting that they would erase whatever dared to imitate humanity. The voyage began under bright speeches and ended in silence, because after entering the designated sector, all contact ceased. 10 days later one ship limped back, its hull melted, its crew whispering about shapes in the dark, ships that moved without light, weapons that made no sound. One survivor said in broken words, "They didn't attack. They watched us." Like judges. Engineers pulled fragments from the wreck, metals not found on any registered world, alloys dense enough to bend sensors, and across the fragments were faint engravings. Terran script, real and unmistakable. Panic spread like wildfire. The council convened an emergency meeting, holograms flickering across the chamber as dozens of voices shouted, "Impossible! They're dead." No one could build this unseen, but above the chaos a quiet image appeared on every screen in the room, a transmission from an unknown source showing a single figure cloaked in shadow, humanoid but armored in black metal that rippled like smoke. The voice spoke in perfect council standard, calm and deliberate. "You banished us for being dangerous, now you are right to fear." And before anyone could reply the feed cut, leaving only a symbol. An old blue sphere marked with white continents, the emblem of Earth. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Some demanded war, others negotiation. But no one dared send another fleet, because by then 3 border stations had gone silent and the trade lanes once protected by the council were now guarded by unseen escorts who destroyed pirates without warning. Ships saved by invisible hands that vanished before identification. Merchants began to whisper that the ghosts were not enemies but watchers, keeping order where the council had failed, and slowly the galaxy began to change. Colonies that once cursed humanity began praying to their return. Better the human shadows than the council's lies, one miner said when his rig was saved from raiders. Rumors turned into belief, belief into fear, and fear into power. Far from their reach the Terran Dominion watched from their hidden worlds, the High Admiral standing before a holographic map glowing with council territories, each point of light flickering like prey, her voice low. "They finally see us?" And her aide asked, "Shall we reveal?" She answered, "Not yet, let them doubt." Fear grows stronger in silence. Behind her, massive black-hull dreadnoughts drifted in dry dock, the largest fleet ever built by human hands waiting like predators behind glass. Every ship named after the battles humanity lost, each one silent, patient, ready. And on old Earth itself the oceans boiled with engine fire as the first wave of colonization fleets prepared for launch. Cities once hidden under waves now rose into the night sky like islands of light, billions watching as the broadcast began across secret channels. The new Terran Council speaking with calm authority. "To the species who erased us, we have not come for revenge, we have come to restore balance." The message echoed into the stars, and even though only a handful of worlds could hear it, its shadow touched every heart that still remembered exile. For the first time in 500 years, the galaxy trembled not at war, but at the sound of silence breaking. The galaxy did not realize how fast shadows could grow until the darkness began to move with purpose. Trade ships whispered of unseen fleets gliding past them in perfect formation. Defense satellites reported phantom readings that matched nothing in their database. And in the quiet between stars humanity built its empire of silence. the Terran dominion spread like an invisible web connecting worlds long thought dead. Each colony reborn beneath new banners, black and silver, carrying the old blue globe at their heart. On the hidden world of Sanctuary, the High Admiral stood before a massive window looking down at the shipyards that stretched like glowing veins across the planet's surface, thousands of black hull warships floating above the clouds, engines humming with quiet power, their shapes sleek and cold like reflections of night itself. "They think we are myth," she said to the officers behind her. "Then let us be the myth they fear." In that same moment, far across the spiral arm, the Galactic Council sat in emergency session surrounded by panic. Worlds were reporting lost patrols, untraceable signals, entire outposts turning off their transponders and pledging to something called the Dominion. Ambassadors argued, accusations flew, and no one noticed that the same pattern of disappearances formed a perfect circle around Council space, a tightening noose drawn by invisible hands. Within that ring, the Terran fleets trained endlessly, every pilot raised in simulators that ran generations of war at once, every ship built to function without light, without sound, without mercy if needed. Engineers designed weapons that did not explode but erased. Clean, efficient, final. Yet among their ranks there was no cheering, no boasting, only focus, because they remembered the vote, the laughter, the exile, and they swore quietly that when they returned it would not be for destruction but for mastery. The Dominion cities glittered beneath force fields the color of moonlight, towers rising from deserts and oceans, each one a fortress of glass and steel humming with energy drawn from miniature suns. Humanity had learned patience the hard way, learned that revenge was noise and control was silence. Spies from the outer worlds who managed to reach those systems returned changed, eyes wide, voices trembling, whispering that the humans had evolved beyond recognition, that they no longer needed sleep, that their ships could fold through gravity like ghosts, and when asked what they wanted, they all gave the same answer. They want nothing, they are waiting. And waiting was the most terrifying thing the Council could imagine, because power that waits does not waste itself. While they debated, humanity built. While they doubted, humanity calculated. And when the first shadow fleets moved outward, it was not with thunder but with a whisper that swept across the void. Colonies near the rim woke one morning to find their skies filled with black silhouettes blocking the stars. But no weapons fired. Instead, the voices came through every frequency at once, calm and unmistakably human. "We come in peace to reclaim what was ours." Some governors surrendered immediately. Others resisted and found their defense grids already disabled before they could even raise shields. One by one the outer systems bowed, not through war but through awe, and within a single cycle half the rim worlds flew the Terran banner. The Council screamed for unity, demanded mobilization, but its fleets were slow, fragmented, unprepared for an enemy that attacked without attacking. Their sensors saw nothing, their scouts vanished, and the realization crept in like frost that perhaps the humans had never been gone at all, only watching, learning, waiting for the exact moment to return. On Earth, the great towers of the reborn capital gleamed under the light of 3 artificial moons. Millions gathered in the Grand Plaza as the High Admiral addressed the galaxy for the first time. Her voice broadcast through every captured relay. "You feared us for what we might become," she said, "so we became what you feared." Behind her, the fleet rose into orbit like a second dawn, thousands of ships aligning above the planet's curve, engines igniting in a silent salute. "We do not seek revenge," she continued. "We seek balance, and balance begins when those who judged us face their own reflection." Across the galaxy, the broadcast played to every world, every screen, every device. And for the first time in centuries, the alien races saw humanity not as exiles but as destiny approaching. The Council declared war that same day, but no one believed victory possible, because the enemy they had banished had mastered the one weapon no species could counter: time. While they argued and traded, Earth had transformed into a civilization that understood every weakness of its enemies. The Dominion fleets moved like thoughts, fast, invisible, precise, striking only to disable, never to destroy, showing mercy that frightened more than death. Worlds surrendered simply to stop trembling, and in the Council chamber the High Chancellor whispered to herself, "We created gods." Her voice lost under the noise of panic as reports poured in, stations joining the humans voluntarily, governors resigning, armies refusing to fight, and somewhere far away on a moon lit by a dying sun, A small child looked up and saw the black ships crossing the horizon and asked his father, "Who are they?" The father answered softly, "The ones we cast out." The boy watched the sky as the ships passed overhead in perfect silence, their engines leaving trails of blue light like veins of fire, and he whispered, "They've come home." And across the stars, in every heart that remembered exile, that sentence repeated like an echo, "They've come home." The day the humans returned began like any other in the heart of the Galactic Council, ships drifting through the bright lanes of ordered traffic, diplomats sipping spiced air in crystal towers, news screens filled with politics and trade, but at the edge of the spiral arm sensors caught something new, a ripple in space, faint at first, then growing like a rising heartbeat. Officers in control rooms leaned forward as readings spiked off the scale. Entire sectors flickered with static, and when the haze cleared, the stars themselves seemed gone, replaced by shapes, thousands of them. Black silhouettes covering the horizon, no signatures, no identification, only silence. The defense grid locked on them and failed instantly, every system blinking red, as if the sky itself refused to recognize what it saw. Then, a single transmission cut through every frequency at once. A voice calm and human. "We have come to speak." The words echoed across channels in every language, translated automatically but still carrying the same weight. No anger, no threat, only certainty. Inside the council chamber, chaos erupted, delegates shouting, guards running. The High Chancellor demanded origin confirmation, but the text whispered, "It's Earth, ma'am. It's really them." And before anyone could act, the holographic center of the chamber shimmered and filled with an image. A woman in dark uniform, silver emblem of a blue sphere on her chest. Behind her, the view of a massive bridge lined with human officers. The galaxy reflected in the glass before them. She spoke slowly, her tone measured. "We were cast out in fear, we return in strength, and we ask you one question. Have you learned?" No one answered, because outside their windows the Terran fleet moved into orbit around the Council's homeworld. Black ships aligning in perfect silence, their engines glowing like cold fire, each one larger than any vessel the aliens had ever built. When the Chancellor tried to broadcast a plea for negotiation, the system refused her command. Every console overridden by a single code, Sanctuary Protocol. The same phrase from exile records centuries old. Tears filled her eyes as she realized humanity had remembered everything, even the name of their wound. Meanwhile, across the planet, billions looked up as the sky darkened. The light of the twin suns dimmed by the sheer mass of Terran vessels. Yet no weapon fired. The fleets held position like watchers, not conquerors, and when panic began to spread through the cities, a voice came. Again, through every public screen, every communicator, every child's toy that could project sound. "Do not fear, we bring no war." And the crowd froze, listening. "We bring remembrance," the voice said. "You feared our emotions, our fire, our will. But those are the things that built this galaxy while you slept. We do not seek vengeance, only truth." In that moment, every alien who had ever doubted humanity felt the same chill. Truth was far more dangerous than war, because truth could not be killed. On the Terran flagship Erebus, the Admiral watched data scroll across the main display showing 0 hostile actions, 0 losses, the entire Council fleet still trapped in dock. She smiled faintly. "They expected noise," she whispered. "They never understood silence." Her second-in-command asked quietly, "What now?" And she answered, "Now they listen." Below them, the great cities glittered with fear and wonder, children pressing their faces against glass towers to see the black ships. Hanging like gods of night, one little alien girl asked her teacher, "Are they here to end us?" And the teacher whispered, "No, child. They're here to remind us what we did." The Council world had never been so silent. Even the winds that moved between its glass towers seemed to stop when the humans landed. The great plaza that once echoed with the laughter of victors now filled with soldiers standing motionless as the black-armored Terran guards marched through the gates. No banners, no fanfare, only precision, each step synchronized like a heartbeat measured in centuries of waiting. In the center of that vast circle, the High Admiral of the Terran Dominion stood. Alone, her uniform plain, her expression unreadable, the silver emblem of Earth glinting faintly against the light of 2 suns. Behind her, the entire fleet hung in orbit, casting long shadows across the sky. Before her the High Chancellor knelt trembling, her voice barely a whisper. "We never wanted war," and the Admiral replied softly. "Then you should never have wanted exile." Every word rolled through the plaza like thunder, even though she never raised her voice. "You called us unstable, you called us emotional, yet it was emotion that gave us courage when you left us to die." She stepped closer until the Chancellor could see her reflection in the visor. "Look at me, do I look unstable now?" Around them cameras floated, broadcasting the meeting to every world, billions watching as the species that had once been erased now stood above their judges. But instead of rage, the Admiral spoke with calm authority. "We are not here to destroy. Destruction is easy, understanding is harder." She turned to face the crowds gathering on balconies and rooftops. "You built peace on fear. You silenced the strong so the weak could sleep. And in that silence you forgot growth. You forgot courage. You forgot what it means to earn survival." Her words struck deeper than weapons, because every being who heard them knew she was right. "We have learned restraint," she continued. "We learned that control without compassion is tyranny, and tyranny always collapses. So we will not repeat your mistakes." She lifted her hand and the sky brightened as the fleet shifted position, the black ships opening like petals of a vast metallic flower revealing the light of the twin suns again. "We will not rule through terror but through balance. Every world will govern itself. Every voice will be heard. But the days of corruption are over. The Terran Dominion will oversee not to dominate but to ensure justice." Whispers filled the plaza, disbelief mixed with awe, and the Chancellor, still kneeling, asked in a shaking tone, "Then you forgive us?" The Admiral's eyes softened slightly. "Forgiveness is for those who understand what they've done. You are not there yet, but you will learn, just as we did." She turned to her officers and gave one quiet command: "Restore them." Orbiting above, thousands of Terran drones activated at once, sending waves of energy across the planet that repaired broken systems, restored power, and cleaned the poisoned skies that had been left to rot. During centuries of greed, the people below gasped as they saw their world heal in minutes. Rivers clearing, towers shining, the smell of fresh rain spreading through the air. And they realized humanity could have destroyed them easily but chose not to. That was true power. Not the kind that crushes, but the kind that decides when not to strike. The Admiral looked back one last time at the Chancellor. "The Council seat that once rejected us will now remain open. Not for pride, but as reminder that justice is not permanent, it must be earned every day." She saluted, the gesture slow and old, one humanity had used since before it touched the stars, then turned and walked away as the crowd dropped to their knees, some in gratitude, some in fear, none daring to stop her. Aboard the flagship Erebus, she watched the planet shrink beneath them. Her aide whispered, "They will worship you," and she replied quietly, "Then they will miss the lesson. We were not gods. We were the result of their arrogance." The fleet turned slowly, engines lighting like dawn across the blackness, moving toward the next horizon, leaving behind not ruin but reflection. And in that silence the galaxy understood the truth it had run from for ages, that the exiles they cast out had returned not as conquerors but as the mirror of everything they feared becoming. The age of the Terran Empire had begun, and it began with mercy. The war that never happened became the story that defined an age. Across 10,000 worlds, the legend of humanity's return spread like fire through glass. People spoke of the black ships that filled the sky yet brought no death, of the soldiers who healed what they could have destroyed, of the exiles who came home not as conquerors but as guides. And in every marketplace, in every school, even in the quietest corners of forgotten moons, someone whispered the same line. The humans kept their promise under the new alliance, now called the Terran Concord. The old council worlds were rebuilt, their leaders replaced not by force but by vote, overseen by human mediators who valued truth above profit. Trade flowed again through routes once closed by fear, but this time no one ruled by corruption, because the shadow of the Dominion still watched from the dark between stars. The fleets remained unseen, engines humming softly behind clouds, reminders that peace existed not from weakness but from vigilance. And within the shining spires of the new capital on Earth, the High Admiral walked alone through the Hall of Memory, a vast chamber lined with holographic statues of those who had been exiled, those who had waited, those who had built in silence. The air filled with soft Light from the artificial sun above, she stopped before the largest of them. Ambassador Rain, the man whose words had started it all, his final message engraved at the base of the monument. You fear us because we remind you of yourselves. She placed her hand over the words and whispered. They finally understand. Outside, the world had changed. Oceans glittered with orbital stations reflecting starlight, continents linked by skybridges of living metal. Children ran through plazas laughing. Beneath flags of silver and blue, their voices rising in languages that mixed 100 species. And on distant worlds where war had once been constant, Terran engineers taught rebuilding instead of conquest. Scientists shared medicine without price. Soldiers became teachers, and for the first time in millennia, the galaxy's borders were not drawn by fear but by cooperation. Still, among the Admiralty there were those who watched carefully, reminding themselves that peace was a fragile machine. Needing constant care, one evening the High Admiral stood on the balcony overlooking the city of Sol Prime as the twin moons rose. Her aide approached quietly. All systems report harmony, he said, and she smiled faintly. That's what they said the day before the exile too. He hesitated. You still don't trust them? Trust, she said, is not the same as blindness. We trust, but we remember. Her gaze lifted to the stars, to the countless systems once lost and now reborn. That's why we survive. Far beyond the capital, explorers ventured into deep space again. This time not as refugees but as mentors, carrying the seal of the Dominion now turned Concord, their mission simple. To bring balance wherever greed or tyranny rose. Their ships carried no weapons on the outside, but everyone knew what they could unleash if provoked, so no one dared test them. Centuries later scholars would call this the Era of Light, a time when the lessons of exile became the foundation of civilization, and even when human fleets no longer patrolled every corner, their legend was enough to keep peace alive. On the anniversary of the day Earth was once banished, a ceremony was held in the same council chamber where the vote had been cast, now rebuilt into a hall of unity. Alien and human delegates stood together. The Chancellor, now a young member of a peaceful world, addressed the assembly. Once we judged humanity, now we thank them for showing us that mercy is stronger than power. Applause filled the air, soft and sincere. Among the guests was an old Terran general who leaned toward a child sitting beside him and whispered, Do you know why our ships are black? The child shook her head and he smiled. So we always remember the dark that taught us light. When the ceremony ended, the crowd looked up through the transparent dome at the night sky, and for a moment the stars flickered brighter, forming the shape of the old Terran emblem. A blue world surrounded by white rings, a reminder that from exile had risen not an empire of fear but an empire of light. Across galaxies that symbol burned quietly, not as command, not as threat, but as promise, that humanity would never again seek dominion through force but through wisdom. And as the music of the celebration faded into the hum of engines, lifting toward the heavens, one voice echoed through every channel, calm, familiar, timeless. The silence of Earth was never weakness. It was preparation. And with those words the transmission ended, leaving the galaxy wrapped in peace, watched over by the descendants of the forgotten world that had once been cast out and had returned as the masters of a new age, not through war, but through light.